Hello, internet friends. My name is Bay, and welcome back to the Shadowlands Alpha First Pass, First Impressions discussion update for the Subtlety Rogue. Easily my, as I have prefaced before on the rogues and any combo point energy-based class, the stuff I have the least amount of time on. I use a lot of my time to learn how the ins and outs go. Obviously, we've amped up our testing this time around because I am doing a dungeon run in every single class, even the rogue ones we did for Assassination yesterday. And in the dungeon footage, you will see I've actually been changing my build up and not just running with whatever is like the best talents and seeing what things do and trying to understand where rogues are coming from and their pain points and their thought process here. But don't expect like, oh, his shadow of symbols of death timing and his shadow dance wasn't perfect and he wasted 6 energy right there. I don't care. That's not the point. You're better at rogue than I am if you play rogue. I have 13 or so specs that I feel that I'm really comfortable on. Rogue is not one of them, but we have learned a lot about the Subtlety Rogue today. I was not expecting how long we tested to be as long as we tested. So, side shout out, of course, the channel guide linked below the video description box or found over on my Twitch channel, twitch.tv/FinalBossTV. All that information is down below in the video description box. If you want the dungeon run, I did actually this dungeon run with MrGM, 2 members of my community, and the lore man himself, Nobbel. That was pretty fun. All the dungeon runs are usually done with friends of mine or other content creators. Those are extra little nuggets if you enjoy. Those are all linked on the channel guide, or they're linked down below in this there video here below. But Subtlety Rogue and overall Rogue stuff, we do have some things to update on that we'll do a little bookkeeping before we get into the sub-rogue specifically. That being very, very clearly, we talked about Crimson Vial on the Assassination Rogue. And Crimson Vial has been nerf/buff/changed. And we talked about this before. I'm in stealth right now with Shadow Focus. Let me just get out of stealth real quick here. Crimson Vial. First off, you're waiting for it. Hi, little guy. What you doing? NPCs look at you now in the game. Anyway, totally side note. Keep him in the frame, though. He's adorable. Zoltimos. Crimson Vial is 20 energy, down from 30. Remaining 30-second cooldown. It's 20% of your health over the 4 seconds instead of 30 over 6. It ticks once a second for 5% of your health. It's an Estus Flask. The one thing I didn't realize or talk about in the Assassination Rogue video, and of course I'll keep the same update for the Outlaw Rogue next week, there is a new interaction with Pickpocket that is very NYI right now, where you will be able to, in the open world anyway, pickpocket mobs, so you have some reason to also do it as a rogue. That gives you the chance to essentially get augments or additional benefits for your Crimson Vial. So it might look nerfed, and it's a little bit weaker in a dungeon or raid setting, but normally there you have a healer. So now, but in the open world section, we don't know what the buffs are going to be, but keep that in mind that it might look like it's all more rogue nerfs, but it might actually be a rebalancing because some of the additional things you could pickpocket for the next use of Crimson Vial or a short-term buff on it or something, not in the game yet. So keep that in mind. But okay. Subtlety Rogue. There is actually a whole lot to unpack here. I am going to, if you watch any of the other content that I cover on these first and second passes, the first pass normally is like, holy crap, all this stuff changed. Second pass is like, holy crap, nothing changed, or the feedback we were hoping for, but we'll see about how that works in this time. Biggest stuff right off the bat for the Rogue. Cheap Shot is 1 combo point generator. Sure. And Sub-Rogue has poisons again. You have instant poison, you have your crippling poison, and you have numbing poison. Not sure if it's a bug or not, but apparently you can have both non-lethal poisons as any rogue. You can also have wound poison, which is a stacking effect now. 5% reduced healing received up to 3 stacks. Of course, if you're not an assassination rogue, your poisons do, of course, apply less frequently. But for the most part, instant poison gives you extra poison damage. Numbing poison is both attack speed and casting speed by 15%. It's a reduction on mobs or players that have been hit by it. However, I do not think this is hooked up in almost any way right now. It only says casting speed on the actual tooltip. Not sure if it's going to actually be also attack speed. That would be really strong. And again, I don't know if it's going to apply to even dungeon bosses or raid bosses, but we'll see. Crippling Poison remains a 50% slow. The database actually says it's 30%, but that's incorrect. Instant Poison is just extra nature damage. Wound Poison does very little nature damage, but of course stacks up the Mortal Wounds debuff. And because of poisons being back, you also have Shiv back. If you watch the Assassination Rogue video, they also have Toxic Blade inside their Shiv usage, which is also it's a bit of an argumentative point because it's damage and it's utility. But if you are called for to use it as utility via the super slow Crippling Poison or the Enrage removal, which is what happens when you have numbing poison on your actual weapon, then it will dispel all Enrage effects for Outlaw and Sub. Super easy to just not use it until you have to use it for utility. Assassination does have the trade-off, which I think is an interesting-ish one, but you'll know if you have to use it for Enrage. And you'll not just blindly use it in Venom window with Vendetta or something, right? It's fine. It may be a little bit frustrating if there is a call for both, but that's a huge point of additional utility on top of a kit that already has so much in it. Again, not to be like rude, but you're a class that sits on things like Shroud and Cloak of Shadows and Feint and the Vanish immunity isn't really a thing, but you get the idea, right? The Rogue kit is crazy. It always has been crazy, even though it's been cut down a little bit over the years. I think it's at a good point, but that is something they added back in on top of the fact that you have poisons again, on top of numbing poison might be super broken or just really strong. We'll have to wait and see. Baseline additional tweaks here. So, the biggest one that has the most interactions and changes to how you might view your Subtlety Rogue, Find Weakness Baseline. On top of all the other passives you have, literally 6 of them. One is Mastery, sure, but look at all of them. So, Find Weakness now reads, and this will get me off a bit of a rant here. It reads that attacks from stealth reveal a flaw in your target's defensive, causing all your attacks to bypass 30% of the enemy's armor for 18 seconds. Couple things. Lasts for 18 seconds. The talented version lasted for 10. The talented version had 40% armor penetration. This one is 30. It has built-in synergies with your base backstab, where now backstab critical strikes will apply Find Weakness for 8 seconds. And the same can be said about your Shuriken Storm. Critical strikes will also apply Find Weakness for 8 seconds. Shuriken Storm is only 8 targets each storm, but that is all built in core with the class. Now, if you don't know how this works, it is not a 30% damage amp. Okay. It is ignoring 30% or bypassing of the target's armor. I'm not going to rant about PvE armor in this video because I've done it a couple times in a row on stream. It's like an hour long or sometimes shorter. If a target has, let's say, 30 or 35% armor, mobs apparently have between 20 and 35%. Depends on the mob type, depends on yada yada, all these different hidden things we don't know about. It's 30% of that. So what I think I've said before in the past, that it's relatively a between 8 and 12% damage bump, depending on the target you are attacking. It's a little bit more if you're attacking weaker targets, and a little bit less if you're attacking stronger targets. All the way around. More if it's bigger, less if it's smaller, because you ignore more of the larger 35% or whatever boss armor is, right? So again, why it's confusing. The additional part of this is that Find Weakness is one more multiplier that stacks with everything else you've got as a rogue, right? So if you got things like Gloomblade, where your backstab will obviously always ignore armor. If you got Night Stalker rolling, if you've got Dark Shadows rolling, and you've got all these other parts of it. You've got obviously your Master Executioner, which is a modifier on all of your actual finishing abilities. So you've got the damage from stealth, from what I'm going to be calling in the rest of this video hard stealth. More on that later. And any bonus extra damage, say on Shadow Blades, for example, the additional combo point generating abilities that also deal additional damage. All of these things, Symbols of Death as well, the Shadow Dance window, all have damage multipliers that would all stack with Find Weakness once you activate it. So it's all those things smushed together. The one weird part about it is it's not applying on backstabs from the front. So it reads like it might, but it's pretty straightforward. When you are behind your target is the 20% damage increase and can apply Find Weakness on crits. So for example, Wonk, which you just saw there, something else that you don't have on live, but we'll get to that more in a moment. So Rupture is back. You see all the hot bars down here. Rupture is wham. No longer do you have Night Blade. That is gone. So your slow or your mortal strike or your plus damage window to the Night Bladed target, that's all gone. But you don't need that because your slow is right here and your damage reduction is right here and the damage you deal to the target is right here. And the additional damage, depending on how the numbers work between Nightblade and Rupture, they both ignore armor because one's a bleed and one was a shadow damage dot. Doesn't matter, right? So this is obviously just part of, you leave this up on targets or you funnel AOE into Weaving Ruptures, which is not AOE. The AOE funnel is, but cross-dotting Rupture or cross-dotting your Nightblade that you had before, that's you're back to rupturing, right? There you go. And then I've already gone over the Find Weakness stuff with the backstab stuff here. More about the passive stuff. You may have already seen it. It's right there in the spell book, and it's all rogues have it. But Slice and Dice returns to all rogues. And if you are a seasoned Subtlety rogue player that goes, wait, we have instant poison back. And Shadow Technique is a big point of how, as you see, I'm not using any abilities, but I'm gaining combo points. How does that work? Shadow Technique is still 1 combo point and 8 energy on your auto attacks that have a chance to generate this. Now, if you don't know how this works, I'll link the post down below in the description box. How this works is, it essentially is a deck of cards with 5 cards in the deck. The first 3 cards will always be blank, meaning that you don't get a proc. Those cards are auto attacks that land. These are auto attacks that land because your offhand can still miss roughly a quarter of the time. So your first 3 cards you draw, main hand hit, offhand hit, main hand hit, all hit. 4th card you draw is a 50% chance for Shadow Techniques to proc. Your 5th card is always a chance. Once you draw the 4th card and it procs, it reshuffles the deck. But again, first 3 are always blank. Or if you hit the 5th card and obviously it procs, then you go right back to the top of the deck again. First 3 cards are blank. You restart the process. With Slice and Dice active, though, the rough testing I did on the testing stream, which again, link in the channel guide, link down below. It's going to, I did about, with the 1.8 speed daggers right here, right? 1.8 speed. We were looking at, where my math is right here. We did potentially between 15 to 20 seconds potentially to gain your full combo points just from auto attacking. And that's just to get 5 combo points. It'd be a little longer if you're running deeper stratagem, of course. I'm not currently. Now, using Slice and Dice, It's 50% faster auto attack speed, shaves off about 4 to 6 seconds. If you watch the difference here. Because if you had 100% attack speed, you'd shave off half. So you're shaving off about 50%. There we go. That overall is going to accelerate the Shadow Technique way that Subtlety Rogue plays. Because on live right now, you're sort of pooling and conserving energy for dance windows. Which more on that soon. That's the next step we're going to get to. But if you're taking between 15 to 18 or so seconds right now, depending on essences and crap, but baseline, to generate 5 combo points and, of course, the additional energy trickle that comes into it. And if you shave off 4 to 6 seconds, that compounds to how much more often you're using finishers. So I'm not sure if that's going to change a secondary stat value for Subtlety Rogue. That's, of course, for very mathy-oriented stuff, which I'll get into this right before we start talking about Shadow Dance. I understand I don't have rogue brain. And I understand that for rogues, and then like hunters, mages, and warlocks also to different degrees, a lot of your decisions are made based off of the math, based off of Shadowcraft, based off of what the awesome Ravenholt community sort of figures out and works out. There are multiple different build options and varieties, which may more open up because of the Find Weakness passive and the couple of the other tweaks here and there. But I get it. You also don't have any other talent up here yet. That's still coming soon, as you see. But usually it's always because your main job is to do the damage. I get that. And in the dungeon run today, I was running 2 different builds. So see, like, does this work? Does Shuriken Tornado do some funny stuff? Does, Master of Shadows and the new Enveloping Shadows do funny stuff? Like, how does it feel? And there is going to be a meta rogue build. Even if the joke is, who's played Subtlety in 2020, LOL, Omega Lol, Keck W, whatever. The overall is that it will be coming down to numbers and math and how certain things lead into other things. I get it. But please keep in mind the core, the update of Slice and Dice on, say, single target bosses, or even putting Slice and Dice up on more AoE situations. It depends on what it calls for. A lot of Shadowlands brings in these niche to if then this kind of situations that you have decisions to make within your rotational abilities. Shadow Techniques, of course, is pretty flat currently, but because of the steroid here, may change things. On top of the next big change, which is Shadow Dance. So, first off on Shadow Dance, I want to get somewhat sassy with tooltips again. I misspoke on stream until we corrected it and I learned what was going on here. Shadow Strike reads that while stealthed, you strike through the shadows and appear behind your target. Leia sneaks up behind you, up to 25 yards away, dealing 25% additional damage. Now, Shadow Dance reads that it grants all of the benefits of stealth for 8 seconds, allows the use of the abilities that require stealth. But that 25% additional damage and the teleport was removed a while ago due to good feedback in this regard, because always teleporting behind your target was definitely going to be annoying. But Blizzard just broke the whole back end of that. So what I said earlier about hard stealth and soft stealth, hard stealth is out of combat stealth. You hit the button called stealth, which is behind my frame right now, but you know what I'm talking about. Stealth. Versus soft stealth, which is Shadow Dance. For the purposes, of course, of Shadow Strike, mostly. So you can teleport behind your target here. If you're in combat and you dance, you do not teleport. You cannot teleport to your target. If you vanish, you're in hard stealth. There, you're back again. So the bonus damage does not apply there. Granted, of course, when you are stealthed, hard stealth, Find Weakness procs. When you're soft stealthed, there's Find Weakness right there, right? Hard stealth. Let me spend some combo points and get my Shadow Dance back real fast. I'm just aggressively building and spending and wasting Shadow Technique. Don't care. Give me the cooldown there. Probably should put up a little Slice and Dice right there. The tooltip is bugged on Slice and Dice. The ability doesn't show it should work. But now, so we're in stealth. No Find Weakness. But Find Weakness procs on Shadow Dance stealth, which is soft stealth. So, yay. But anyway, that's that bit right there. If you didn't know how that all plans out. But Shadow Dance, again, keep in mind I have Shadow Focus currently selected. Subterfuge, Nightblade, update the tooltip. But base Shadow Dance allows the use of abilities and the combat benefits of stealth for 8 seconds. Currently on live, it's 5. Additionally, it's 1 charge, down from 2, but half of Dark Shadow is baked in baseline. Currently, there is no damage amp in Shadow Dance on live. Right now, it's 15%, and to jump ahead, but as it connects together, Dark Shadow increases the damage by 30%. Not a multiplicative one, it just literally makes it go from 15% baseline to 30% baseline. So, the difference from live there would be you're going from 100% to plus 25% in Shadow Dance with Dark Shadow. Now in Shadowlands, lots of shadow stuff going on here. You have 15%, so you have 115 base, and you go to 130 in Dark Shadow Dance. But that means that the step from one to the other isn't as drastic as live. It's a 15% bump from a 25% bump, which may bring some potential to alacrity. Not entirely plausible, but the new Enveloping Shadows, as we're still sitting here talking about Shadow Dance, this makes Deepening Shadows, to go back over here real quick before we talk about off, the cooldown reduction you get with Deepening Shadows is also cut down just slightly to 1 second per combo point spent. Enveloping Shadows takes it all the way to 2 and adds 1 additional charge of Shadow Dance. So this is now 2 dance charges, but again, no Dark Shadow window, but again, the 15% base amount and the higher cooldown reduction on top of the aforementioned Slice and Dice, giving you more combo points on average, allowing you to finish your move more often to get more Deepening Shadow windows. So you keeping up? There's a lot of things that are compounding here, right? Next, Shadow Volt. You may have seen this in the spellbook here. Shadow Volt. This is a new finishing move that consumes combo points. It goes a little bit like this. It's basically Whirling Dragon Punch, the animation, reskinned to be the same exact thing as Shuriken Storm, but just for Rogue. Is a little more like, you know, gooiness to it maybe, because you're jumping up and the particles kind of flub around. It could also be placeholder. Who the heck knows? But can I have the energy, please? Thank you. There's a clip below. I'm not going to do it right now because I want to run all the way back up while recording this video. There's a clip in the description box below showing you can avoid all fall damage from potentially any height if you have combo points and the ability to hit your button at the right timing to break your fall. You are a ninja after all, right? So Shadow Vault is really silly in the fact that currently, if Blizzard doesn't have fun detected alarms going off, you can Shadow Vault to fall from huge heights with at least 1 combo point because they decay really slowly out of combat, and you can obviously break combat with Vanish and do other stuff, but that's something a little bit silly. As you notice there too, to break this together, if you go back real quick to Shuriken Storm, remember the crits give you 8 seconds of Find Weakness. And of course, Shuriken Storm is every target hit gives you 1 combo point, which is real silly. That's how you funnel. Currently, your AOE is Shuriken Storm, Rupture, or right now Nightblade. And then essentially you can still do that. And I definitely did that in a dungeon a bit, depending on the current targets we were attacking. But the Find Weakness window syncs up with Shadow Vault. So you finish your move that leaps into the air, spray shurikens on all nearby targets. This is 10 yards, 8 targets. This is also 10 yards, no target cap. The weird thing is, this says nearby with no range. This says all within 10. So nearby normally means 8 yards in World of Warcraft terms, but okay. Targets with your Find Weakness suffer an additional 50% shadow damage from your ability. So if you get lucky and you obviously weave in some crits right there, you're going to immediately see that you will do the Shadow Vault damage and the Shadow Vault shadow damage. Right now, Subtlety Rogue does not have any AOE. And I'm not advocating and trying to make some big grandiose statement that this is going to make you have AOE. At least not at like some ridiculous level. But this is something. And numbers are not set in stone. Numbers are not a thing right now. So who knows how that's going to be in the long run. Additionally, we have Symbols of Death, which you saw a little bit earlier. Symbols of Death is still here. I know, get your groans out of the way. I know people have heard it before in Twitch chat tonight. It's still 40 energy, 30-second cooldown. It's off the GCD, and so is Shadow Dance, so don't freak out about any of that changing. It gives you essentially a, not neutered, but different form of Cold Blood, where you get the 15% damage for 10 seconds, which obviously stacks with everything else, all your windows, all the other things. But your next combo point generator will critically strike. Shuriken Storm. When it crits, it applies Find Weakness. When you Shadow Vault, it deals additional shadow damage, which obviously bypasses armor. But then they obviously have Find Weakness on them, so that gives you a little bit at 8 to 12% more damage from the base Shadow Vault, which then amplifies the shadow damage it does. And then also gets 15% more damage from Symbols of Death, and you can also use that in a Shadow Dance window with, say, like Night Stalker, for example. Or you can do Dark Shadow on top of it. Or you can do Master of Shadows to gain the extra energy when you go in, so you make sure you can keep hitting those buttons. Or currently bugged, Shuriken Tornado does not eat the Cold Blood effect. So all 4 waves crit, and then when you use your own, that also crits. I don't know if that's intentional, or if the whole Shuriken Tornado would make all 4 Shuriken Storms crit, but then eat the debuff, or the buff on you, rather, and apply, of course, your debuff to things around you. Because I did it in the dungeon, you could definitely go into Shuriken Tornado, and then just Tornado on 5+ mobs, or maybe 5 or 6+ mobs if you're running Deeper Shadow Gem for that extra bit there. And it would Tornado, and then you would Vault. Tornado and Vault. Tornado and Vault. Tornado and Vault. And then regular Shuriken Storm and Vault, etc., 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 etc. Secret Technique. Secret Technique would fit in here as being a replacement to Shadow Vault. Every so many of them. Because Shadow Vault's obviously baseline and core, not that strong. Secret Technique is far stronger, but has a cooldown. But every time you use a finisher, every one combo point is 1 second off of Secret Technique. So 5 or 6 seconds up every single time. So you'd be able to build and spend on Shadow Vaults in AoE to cool down Secret Technique now. So you have a lot of potential with Shuriken combo still being a thing with damage funneling into single target. I did it today on the second boss of the Vampire Dungeon because multiple ads spawn. So I would queue up a Shuriken Storm to put up my Rupture, and then queue up a Shuriken Storm to put up my Slice and Dice, and then Shuriken Tornado inside of a Shadow Dance window with Symbols of Death on. And I would just basically slam 6 combo point eviscerates into the back of that big old gargoyle's head because he's super buffed right now and is really annoying. You basically tunnel him down or you die to the stupid imps, or the little gargoyle boys, whatever. So there's something there. And there's something there with maybe the situation calls for, you don't need as crazy bursty multiplicative stacked windows, so you take Enveloping Shadows for more dance windows. You take Subterfuge, which gives you your stealth moves for 3 seconds after Shadow Dance ends, but also gives you 1 more second in Shadow Dance windows. So you've got 9 seconds in there now with the 15% built-in damage. And then even 3 seconds after you're done dancing, you can still hit Shadow Strike. So you still get that build potential there if that's what it calls for. It ended. I can still Shadow Strike. Oh, well, that ended quicker than I was expecting. But there's something here, right? Marked for Death syncs up with the ability to be able to be used on potential AOE, or the way I talked about it in the Assassination Rogue video is that you can always now, before pulls, Marked for Death Slice and Dice. Where'd my Mark for Death go? Oh, wrong button. Good stuff. There we go. I did it. So you can always open with Slice and Dice. And bam. So there's something to that, maybe. See, didn't have enough. I should have just done the 4-pointer there. But there's something there. I'm not going to go into Shadow Blades being a good or bad or terrible cooldown. It's good. It's not great. I get the feedback for it. It's a strange one. It amplifies and pushes you towards more finishers, but it doesn't amplify the finishers. But again, now Shadow Dance by default amplifies your finishers on top of, you combine it with Night Stalker for even more, or Dark Shadow for even more, or Enveloping Shadows for more windows where you're buffing him. So, see what I mean? Stack, 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 stack on top of each other. That is the Subtlety Rogue, at least from the top-down look at it. That's all my notes. Let me know what you think about the Sub-Rogue. Of course, we'll see again when we get to a second pass to see if this changes. Weapon Master still stays only Shadow Strike and Backstab. People are asking if it actually worked with Shuriken Storm or Shadow Vault or anything like that. No, it's just your builders. That's that. There's some stuff here. I'm curious to see what actual rogues make of the potential not only AoE funnel to single target version, and how Shadowlands works for the Subtlety Rogue. But thank you very much for, of course, watching and or listening, following along, putting up with my complete nonsense, trying to figure out how all these specs work. Of course, check the channel guide down below for the channel guide where everything is saved. If you want to watch the awkward dungeon run we did to see how I tried different things out on different trash packs or different bosses, feel free. But we've got the Outlaw Rogue coming up next. Thank you all very much for watching and or listening, and I will see you all in the next Rogue video. And monks are after rogues.